Late one evening at Tesla's Fremont factory, Elon Musk found himself lost in thought, staring at his laptop as he reviewed data for a new battery prototype. The hum of machines echoed faintly throughout the empty factory, a constant reminder of Tesla's commitment to innovation. Despite the late hour, Elon was still at work. It was nothing unusual for him to lose track of time, especially when working on something he was passionate about. The clock read 2:13 a.m., and while the factory was quiet, it wasn't entirely still. There was always something running, always something being built. The cool night air outside the factory doors beckoned him. Elon closed his laptop, rubbed his tired eyes, and decided it was time to head home. He had been at the factory for hours, lost in the details of the project. As he walked through the nearly deserted hallways, he couldn't help but appreciate the quiet. With most employees gone, the factory felt different, a rare stillness that allowed him to think clearly. As he exited the building, the familiar sounds of the factory behind him gave way to the night. The parking lot was mostly empty, a few cars scattered in the distance, illuminated by the pale glow of streetlights. Elon always appreciated these quiet moments. The stillness of the lot seemed like a reprieve from the constant noise of work and innovation. His red Tesla Model S sat in its usual spot near the entrance. But as he made his way toward the car, something caught his eye. Off in the corner of the lot, under the flickering light of a street lamp, an old Honda Civic sat alone. At first, Elon thought little of it, just another vehicle parked late. But as he got closer, he noticed something odd. There was a person inside. The figure inside appeared to be sleeping, the shape of their body clearly visible against the fogged windows. It wasn't a sight he expected to see on a late night at the Tesla factory. Employees often stayed late, but Elon couldn't recall seeing anyone parked out here at this time, especially in a car that looked as worn out as the Civic. The car's faded paint, dents in the fender, and fogged-up windows hinted at age and disrepair. It was a stark contrast to the pristine machines he was accustomed to seeing in Tesla's parking lot. He approached the car slowly, his curiosity piqued. As he neared, he could make out a young man slouched in the driver's seat, his head resting against the window. Elon hesitated for a moment before deciding to investigate. He had seen plenty of employees take naps in their cars before, especially after late shifts. But something about this situation felt different. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a quick break between shifts. He walked over to the car, tapping gently on the window. The young man jumped awake, startled by the sound. His eyes widened with shock and confusion, and he scrambled to sit upright, only to bang his head on the roof of the car in his frantic attempt to react. It was a moment of awkward panic, but Elon stood patiently, waiting for him to collect himself. When the young man finally met his gaze, his shock turned to recognition. "Mr. Musk?" he gasped, clearly still disoriented. He quickly rolled down the window, wiping his hands on his wrinkled Tesla shirt. Elon stood back, keeping his expression neutral. He didn't want to come across as intimidating, but he could tell that the young man was deeply embarrassed. "What are you doing here?" Elon asked, his voice calm but curious. The young man hesitated, clearly nervous. I wasn't doing anything wrong," he stammered, avoiding Elon's eyes. I finished my shift and I was really tired. I thought I'd rest for a bit before heading home." Elon glanced at his watch. "That was over 4 hours ago," he noted, his tone soft but pointed. The man swallowed hard, clearly realizing he'd been caught in a lie, or at least a half-truth. He dropped his head in shame. I don't have anywhere to go. I've been living in my car for the last 3 weeks," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Elon felt a momentary shock. He hadn't expected this answer. Tesla was known for its culture of innovation, but he had never considered how the financial struggles of some of his employees might be affecting their lives in such a direct way. He had read reports about the Bay Area housing crisis, but seeing the reality of it firsthand, right here in his parking lot, was a different experience entirely. "Why are you living in your car?" Elon asked, his tone still calm, but with an undercurrent of concern. The young man, clearly embarrassed, took a deep breath before speaking again. "I got evicted from my apartment about 3 weeks ago. My rent went up, and I couldn't afford it anymore. I've been looking for a new place, but rent prices around here are ridiculous. Even if I got a roommate, I still couldn't make it work." Elon studied him carefully. The man's voice was tinged with frustration, but there was also an underlying sense of determination. He wasn't giving up. He was trying to make it work despite the overwhelming odds. "How long have you been working for Tesla?" Elon asked. "About 8 months now," the young man replied. "And you've been living in your car for the last 3 weeks?" Elon repeated, trying to process the full scope of the situation. The young man nodded, his gaze dropping to his hands. "Yes, sir. I'm doing everything I can to keep working, to keep my job. I don't want to lose it, but the rent increases, the cost of living around here. I just couldn't keep up." Elon felt a wave of empathy. He had known about the housing crisis, of course, but seeing it up close with one of his own employees experiencing it so personally was eye-opening. He realized that the cost of living was driving people into increasingly dire situations, and Tesla, despite all its success and innovation, had somehow missed the mark in supporting its workers in this regard. "Where do you shower? How do you get ready for work?" Elon asked, his curiosity now taking on a more practical tone. "There's a gym nearby that has cheap memberships. I shower there in the mornings before work. I keep my clothes in my locker at the factory," the young man explained, his voice quieter now. Elon nodded thoughtfully. He had heard of similar stories, but never from someone so close to the company. "And no one knows about this?" he asked. "No, sir. I've been careful. I park in different spots, never in the same place twice. I haven't been late for work. I've tried to keep everything as normal as possible," the man said. Elon studied the young man, now feeling a sense of both admiration and sorrow. He had been doing everything he could to keep up appearances, to maintain his dignity despite the difficult circumstances. "Your name?" Elon asked. "Luke Barnes," the young man replied, his voice still quiet. "Well, Luke," Elon said after a moment's pause, "I want you to meet me in the office tomorrow. We need to talk." Luke blinked in surprise. "Wait, you're not going to fire me?" he asked, his voice tinged with panic. Elon shook his head. "I'm not firing you. Just meet me tomorrow morning. We'll figure something out." Without another word, Elon turned and walked back toward his car, leaving Luke alone in the parking lot, his mind racing. Luke stood there for a few moments, not quite able to process what had just happened. The uncertainty that had loomed over him for weeks suddenly felt a little less heavy. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but the fact that Elon Musk had noticed him, had offered to meet with him, meant that there might be a way out of this situation after all. As Elon's red Tesla disappeared into the distance, Luke let out a shaky breath. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a small flicker of hope. The next morning, Luke could hardly contain his anxiety. The brief exchange with Elon Musk in the parking lot had left him with a mix of hope and uncertainty. He had spent most of the night tossing and turning, wondering what kind of conversation awaited him. He hadn't slept much, his thoughts consumed by the possibilities of what Elon Musk could want to discuss. Was he going to be offered help, or was this just a polite gesture, a way for Elon to ease his conscience? Despite his nerves, Luke forced himself to get up early, pack up his few belongings from his car, and head into the factory. He had to act like everything was normal, even though his heart was racing. It was only a few hours before he would meet Elon in the office, but it felt like an eternity. When he arrived at work, it was still early. Most of the factory's employees hadn't arrived yet, and the place was eerily quiet. He felt a pang of dread as he walked past the production line, trying to focus on his routine. He couldn't shake the feeling that today would change everything, though he had no idea in what direction. As he entered the main building, he stopped by the locker room to grab his uniform, his hands trembling slightly. He was just trying to keep his mind on autopilot. When he finished, he made his way to the executive office area, where he had been instructed to meet Elon. His footsteps echoed in the empty halls, and he felt like an imposter in a place where he didn't belong. Luke finally reached the door of Elon's office. He stood there for a moment, staring at the polished brass handle. He was trying to calm himself, but his anxiety was still mounting. Taking a deep breath, he knocked softly before entering. "Come in!" Elon's voice called from the other side. Luke pushed the door open, stepping into the spacious office. Elon sat at a sleek desk, reviewing some papers on his tablet, but he looked up as Luke entered. He smiled warmly, an expression that helped to settle Luke's nerves a bit. "Luke, good to see you again," Elon said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. "Please sit." Luke nodded, taking a seat across from Elon, trying to make himself comfortable. He could feel the weight of the conversation that was about to unfold, but he didn't know what to expect. "I wanted to follow up on our conversation last night," Elon began, setting the tablet aside. "I've been thinking a lot about your situation. The fact that you've been working here for months and have been dealing with this, well, it's not something I expected." Luke swallowed, unsure what to say. "I didn't want to cause trouble," he said, his voice slightly strained. "I've been doing my best to keep it together. I've been working extra hours to make ends meet, but it's hard when rent keeps going up, and I'm struggling just to find a place to live." Elon nodded, his expression sympathetic. "I understand. The housing crisis in the Bay Area is out of control, but it's not just you. There are thousands of people here who are struggling to afford housing, and we haven't been doing enough to support them." Luke blinked, surprised by the directness of Elon's response. He had expected a lot of things, but this wasn't one of them. "I don't know what I can do about it," Luke muttered. "I've been trying to hold on, but I can't keep living like this. I'm afraid I might lose my job if someone finds out." Elon leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "I don't want you to worry about losing your job. What I want to talk to you about is how we can make things better for employees like you, people who are working hard but still can't afford to live near their work. You've been struggling with housing insecurity, and I want to do something about it. I've been working on a project for the past few months to address this issue." Luke raised an eyebrow, unsure if he was hearing Elon correctly. "A project?" he asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. Elon nodded. "Yes, a project aimed at creating affordable housing for our employees. I've been in talks with some engineers and designers, and we're putting together a plan to build a community of affordable, sustainable homes. Homes that people can actually afford, and I want you to be a part of it." Luke's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't what he had expected at all. "Me? Why would you want someone like me on a project like that? I'm just a production worker, Mr. Musk. I don't have any expertise in housing or design." Elon smiled, shaking his head. "That's where you're wrong, Luke. You've been living this experience. You understand the real-world challenges that come with housing insecurity. Your perspective is invaluable. You're going to bring something to this project that no one else can." Luke sat back, stunned. He had expected some kind of charity, but this was an opportunity to be part of something bigger than himself. It felt almost surreal. He was still processing the idea of being involved in such a large-scale project, let alone being chosen for it. "But I don't know anything about designing houses," Luke said, still unsure. "I don't have the skills for something like that." Elon nodded thoughtfully. "You don't need to be a designer to help. We're looking for someone who can provide practical input, someone who understands the needs of people like you. You've worked on the production line for months. You know what it's like to deal with tight spaces, to struggle with limited resources. You can help us create something that works for real people. That's what matters." Luke felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He had never imagined that his own struggles could lead to something like this. "I don't know what to say. This is all so unexpected." Elon's smile widened. "You don't have to say anything yet. I just want you to consider this. We're creating something that could change the lives of thousands of people who are going through the same thing you are. We want you to be a part of that change." Luke sat in silence for a moment, trying to absorb what Elon was saying. This could be the opportunity he had been waiting for. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about contributing to something that could help others in similar situations. "I'll do it," Luke said finally, his voice steady. "I'll be a part of the project." Elon's eyes brightened, and he extended a hand across the desk. "Great. We'll start today. I'll have my team get you up to speed. We'll need your insights, your ideas. I think you'll be a great fit." Luke shook Elon's hand firmly. He felt a sense of hope for the first time in weeks. This wasn't just a chance to escape his current circumstances. It was a chance to make a difference in the lives of others who were struggling just like him. "Thank you, Mr. Musk," Luke said quietly. Elon corrected him with a smile. "Call me Elon." Luke's mind raced as he left Elon's office. The conversation had been brief, but in that short time, his life had taken an unexpected turn. He had been invited to join a project that could change not only his future, but also the lives of many of his co-workers. The idea of creating affordable housing for Tesla employees was something Luke never could have imagined when he was sleeping in his car the night before. Now he was going to help shape that future. His first task was to meet with the team working on the project. Elon had mentioned bringing together engineers, designers, and experts in sustainable housing, but Luke felt like an outsider. How could someone who had been working on the production line for months, someone who had never even thought about design or architecture, contribute to such an ambitious project? Still, Luke was determined. He had to at least try. He had never been the type to back down from a challenge, and this one felt like the biggest yet. The next day, Luke arrived early at the factory, his mind filled with a mixture of excitement and nerves. He walked past the production line, where the usual bustle of workers was already in full swing, but he couldn't focus on any of it. Today was different. Today, he was heading into the unknown. He met with Elon, who briefed him on the project's goals. Tesla, known for its innovation in electric vehicles, now set its sights on solving another major issue: housing. Elon spoke passionately about the project's potential to change the way people lived and worked, to create affordable, sustainable communities for Tesla employees. But Luke still didn't know exactly where he fit into the picture. "Luke," Elon said, breaking through his thoughts, "I've arranged for you to meet the team this afternoon. We need your input on what it's like to work here and live in a place where the cost of housing is so high. We're looking for practical ideas. You've got the kind of experience we need." Luke nodded, though his heart was pounding. He couldn't help but feel a little out of his depth. Still, Elon's confidence in him was infectious. He had to give this everything he had. That afternoon, Luke walked into a conference room where the project team had gathered. The room was filled with a mix of engineers, designers, and architects, all focused on their laptops or discussing blueprints and design models. Luke felt a bit out of place among the polished professionals, but when Elon entered the room and introduced him, everything seemed to quiet down. "This is Luke Barnes," Elon said with a smile. "He's going to be working with us on the Tesla home project. He brings something to the table that none of us can: real-world experience. He's been living with the housing issues many of you are trying to solve. Luke, why don't you tell the team a bit about your experience?" Luke swallowed hard and stood up, his palms sweaty. It wasn't easy to speak in front of a group, especially when he felt so out of place, but he took a deep breath, recalling Elon's words about bringing his perspective to the table. I'm not sure where to start," he began, his voice a little shaky. "I've been working at Tesla for about 8 months. I was really proud to get the job here, but the rent kept going up, and soon I couldn't afford to live anywhere close. I tried to make it work. I worked extra shifts, cut back on everything I could, but it wasn't enough. I ended up getting evicted and living in my car for 3 weeks." There was a brief silence in the room. The team members exchanged glances, clearly surprised by Luke's honesty. Luke continued, trying to steady himself. "I know this isn't the kind of stuff you normally think about when it comes to building cars or new tech, but it's a reality for a lot of people. Even here, I had to figure out ways to survive, showering at a gym, keeping my clothes in a locker at work. And it's exhausting. I was lucky to keep my job. Some people can't say the same." Elon nodded thoughtfully, looking around the room at the team members. Luke's perspective is why he's here. This project is about more than just building homes. It's about building real solutions that meet the needs of the people who work for Tesla. We want to create a housing model that isn't just affordable. It's practical, sustainable, and lives up to the values we hold as a company. Luke looked around the room, feeling the weight of their gazes on him. He had never been part of something like this before, never felt like his voice was so important. As the team started to discuss initial designs and the technical aspects of the project, Luke realized that his thoughts, his experiences, were going to shape what this housing community would look like. The team wanted to create modular homes that could be quickly built and scaled using Tesla's manufacturing expertise. Solar panels, energy-efficient appliances, and sustainable materials would make the homes both affordable and environmentally friendly. But there was a problem. Designing a home that could be mass-produced while still meeting the needs of real people was more complicated than they had anticipated. The engineers and designers began discussing how to optimize space, how to make the homes as energy efficient as possible. Luke listened intently, but his mind kept drifting back to his own experiences. What had made a home feel like home? What were the things he needed in a space, especially when it felt like you didn't have much? As the meeting continued, Luke began to speak up more. He offered suggestions on ways to make the homes more practical. Small details like reducing the size of appliances, something he had lived with for weeks when he was forced to downsize. He also talked about the importance of privacy, the value of a small personal space, even in a small apartment. He suggested that they think about how people would live in these homes, how they would use space, how they would need to store their belongings. What if we made the kitchens more efficient? Luke asked, feeling more comfortable now. Smaller fridges, compact stoves. When you're living on a tight budget, you don't need a big refrigerator. A small one would save on energy, space, and money. One of the engineers, a woman named Rachel, looked up at him, surprised. That's actually a good point. Most people don't need giant appliances, especially when they're single or living in smaller spaces. That could be a huge cost-saving measure. Another designer, Tom, chimed in, and it could open up space for other features, like built-in storage. We could make the homes feel bigger without actually adding more square footage. Luke nodded, encouraged by their responses. Exactly. The little things make a difference. Things like built-in shelves or wall-mounted storage units where people can keep their belongings without taking up too much room. As the meeting progressed, Luke's confidence continued to grow. His ideas were being taken seriously. The team was starting to see things from his perspective, not just as designers or engineers, but as people who could relate to the very issues Luke had faced. By the end of the day, Luke was feeling more energized than he had in weeks. He had contributed something meaningful to the project, and it felt good to know that his ideas were being valued. As the team broke for the evening, Elon approached him. Luke, you've done great today. You're a natural at this. We'll need your input every step of the way. I'm glad you're part of the team. Luke smiled, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Thanks, Elon. I'm just glad to be part of this. I want to help make a difference. Over the next few weeks, Luke's life took on a new rhythm. No longer just a production line worker, he was now part of a groundbreaking team at Tesla, working on an initiative that could potentially reshape the future of affordable housing. Each day, he went into the office with a sense of purpose that he had never experienced before. His role was still unfamiliar, but it was quickly becoming clear that the insights he offered were not only welcome, they were essential. The project team, made up of engineers, architects, and sustainability experts, had grown to respect Luke's perspective. Initially, he had been unsure about his place in the group, feeling out of his depth compared to his more highly educated colleagues. But as time went on, he began to see how his practical knowledge of life as a worker, someone who had struggled with housing insecurity, was invaluable. His experience with the real-world implications of expensive, impractical housing designs gave him a unique ability to think outside the box. Luke was the first to admit that he didn't have any technical expertise. He didn't have a degree in architecture or engineering, but what he lacked in formal education, he made up for in life experience. He had lived the struggles that many of the employees in the Bay Area were facing. He knew firsthand what it was like to choose between paying for rent or putting food on the table, to navigate an unfair housing market, and to feel the weight of uncertainty every time he went to sleep in his car. His suggestions weren't always technical, but they were always rooted in practicality. During one of the team's brainstorming sessions, the discussion turned to the layout of the modular homes. The architects were focused on maximizing space, trying to make the most out of every square foot. But Luke, who had spent months living in a cramped car, had a different idea. I think it's important to remember that people don't just need space, they need a place that feels like their own, Luke said, speaking up during the meeting. When you're living somewhere temporary, like a car or a small apartment, it's easy to feel like nothing belongs to you. I think we should think about how to make each home feel personal, even if it's small. One of the architects, Raphael, looked up thoughtfully. What do you mean by personal? He asked. Well, Luke continued, small touches that make the space feel like it's yours. Maybe a built-in space for a desk or a window seat, somewhere you can sit and relax, even in a smaller home. Something that gives you a sense of ownership, no matter how little space you have. The room fell silent for a moment as the team absorbed his words. Then slowly, people began nodding. "That's an interesting idea," Rachel said. "A space for people to call their own, even in a small apartment. It's the kind of thing that could make a home feel more permanent." Luke smiled, grateful for their openness. "Exactly. It's about creating a space where people feel like they belong, even if it's temporary. It's the little things that make a big difference when it comes to how people feel about where they live." Over the next few days, Luke's idea of personal space began to influence the design of the homes. The team explored different ways to integrate small, functional spaces into the homes. They looked at features like built-in storage, foldable tables, and wall-mounted desks that wouldn't take up too much room, but would give residents a sense of ownership and comfort. Luke's contributions were beginning to shape the project in ways that surprised even him. He had gone from feeling like an outsider in a room full of experts to becoming a key player in the development of Tesla's housing initiative. Every day he felt more confident in his role. The team had started to see him not just as a worker from the production line, but as someone who had valuable insights and ideas. Even Elon, who had taken a special interest in Luke's contributions, was impressed by how well Luke had integrated into the team. "You're doing great work, Luke," Elon said one afternoon as the team wrapped up another meeting. "You're not just providing input, you're helping to drive this project forward. The team's really responding to your ideas." Luke was taken aback by the compliment. "I'm just trying to offer what I can," he replied modestly. "I know it's not much, but I've seen what doesn't work. I just want to make sure these homes are practical for the people who need them most." Elon nodded, clearly pleased. "And that's exactly why you're here. You understand what people need because you've lived it. Don't sell yourself short. This project wouldn't be where it is without your input." As the weeks went on, Luke continued to become more involved in the project. He worked closely with Rachel and Raphael to refine the designs of the homes, and his suggestions were often the tipping point for some of the team's most creative ideas. His understanding of what people truly needed in a home, things like affordable, energy-efficient appliances, compact but functional furniture, and community spaces, was helping the team think outside the box. One evening, after a particularly long day of brainstorming, Luke stayed behind to review the latest designs. He was seated at a table in the conference room, surrounded by blueprints and notes, when Elon walked in. "You've been burning the midnight oil, huh?" Elon said, walking over to Luke's table. "How's everything looking?" Luke looked up and smiled. "It's coming together. I think we're making progress. It's been a lot of work, but I think we're on the right track." Elon took a seat across from him, studying the designs. "You've really made a difference on this project, Luke. I want you to know that. This wouldn't be the same without you." Luke felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was truly contributing to something important. The weight of his past struggles seemed to have transformed into something positive, something that could help other people just like him. As the team continued to refine the designs and plans, Luke's confidence grew. He had gone from feeling out of place to becoming an integral part of a project that was already starting to take shape. And with each passing day, the vision of creating affordable, sustainable housing for Tesla employees seemed more and more achievable. As the weeks turned into months, Luke's role on the Tesla home project became more defined. His contributions, though initially small, had grown into integral parts of the team's design process. What started as a simple, practical perspective had blossomed into a driving force behind the project's evolution. His insights about real-world living conditions, the challenges of affordability, and the need for practicality in housing were beginning to shape the very foundation of the design. The work was demanding, but Luke had never felt more engaged. Every day he contributed something meaningful, whether it was refining layouts, suggesting cost-saving measures, or adding small touches to the designs that made them feel more livable. The team had become a close-knit group, with everyone, engineers, architects, sustainability experts, relying on each other's ideas. And Luke, once the outsider, had earned a place among them, not just as a voice for practical solutions, but as someone whose input was highly valued. But with all the progress came new challenges. As the scope of the Tesla home project grew, so did the complexity. The team now had a vision not just for a few affordable homes, but for entire neighborhoods. Self-sustaining communities powered by Tesla's solar technology, with shared energy resources, community gardens, and spaces designed to foster connections among residents. Elon's ambition was clear. This wasn't just about building homes. It was about building a new kind of community, one where sustainable living wasn't a luxury, but a reality for all Tesla employees. The team had to move quickly. Elon had set ambitious timelines. Designs had to be finalized, materials had to be sourced, and production lines had to be prepared to scale up. The goal was clear: build as many homes as possible, as quickly as possible, without compromising on quality. And the pressure was mounting. But Luke, for the first time in his life, felt like he was part of something much bigger than himself. He wasn't just designing houses, he was part of a revolution. One afternoon, while sitting with Rachel and Tom, reviewing some of the final plans for the first prototype homes, Luke felt a sense of pride he had never experienced before. He had grown so much since he first joined the team. His understanding of design had deepened, his confidence had increased, and he was no longer the man who had been sleeping in his car. He was a collaborator, a creator. "This is it, huh?" Luke said, running his finger along the blueprint of a new apartment layout. "These designs are going to change everything." Rachel nodded, her eyes bright. "I think so. We've never seen anything like this before. We're not just building homes, we're creating something that could be a model for the entire country, maybe the world. Affordable, sustainable housing that doesn't sacrifice quality or comfort, it's exactly what we need." Luke smiled, still feeling a bit incredulous. "It's wild to think about. A few months ago, I was living in my car, trying to figure out how to survive. Now I'm helping to design homes that could change lives. It doesn't feel real." Tom leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You've done more than just help, Luke. You've been the heart of this project. The ideas you brought to the table are what have made this so practical. If we want this to succeed, it has to be about real people, and that's something only you could have brought to the table." Luke felt a sense of warmth spread through him. He had always wanted to make a difference, to contribute in a meaningful way, and now it was happening. He was no longer just a cog in the machine. He was part of a movement. His voice, his experiences, and his ideas were shaping the future. That evening, Luke stayed late to work on some of the final details. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the lights in the conference room flickered on, casting long shadows on the walls. He glanced out the window, thinking about how much his life had changed. Just a few months ago, he had been lost, sleeping in his car, unsure how to get by. But now he was working on something that mattered. He was no longer just fighting for survival, he was fighting for change. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. He glanced down and saw a message from Mai, one of the engineers he had worked closely with on the project. Over the past few weeks, their friendship had grown, and there was a comfort in their shared dedication to the project. Luke had always appreciated her down-to-earth attitude, and she had become a kind of anchor for him in the whirlwind of work and deadlines. "Mai, how's it going? Everything good?" Luke smiled to himself before typing back. "Luke, yeah, just finalizing some details. It's getting real, you know?" A few seconds later, Mai replied, "Mai, I know. It's crazy. You've really made a difference, Luke. I can't wait to see this take shape." Luke felt a warmth spread through him as he read her message. Over the past few weeks, he had come to respect Mai not only for her skills and intelligence, but for her genuine kindness and understanding. They had shared stories over late-night dinners and long work sessions, and Luke had grown to trust her. "Luke, thanks, Mai. I appreciate that. I'm glad I'm here. I think this project is going to be something incredible." A few minutes passed, and then another message from Mai appeared. "Mai, it already is. We're all part of something big, Luke. This is going to change so many lives." The words resonated with Luke, filling him with a sense of pride and purpose that he had never known. He wasn't just part of a team working on a project anymore. He was part of something much larger. They were creating homes, yes, but they were also creating stability, dignity, and hope for people who had been left behind by the system. For the first time in his life, Luke felt like he was contributing to something that truly mattered. He looked at the blueprints in front of him and realized something profound. This project wasn't just about affordable housing. It was about making sure that people had the opportunity to live with dignity and security. It was about creating spaces where people could thrive, not just survive. As he packed up his things for the night, Luke made a decision. He wasn't going to stop here. He was going to keep pushing, keep contributing, and keep helping to shape this project. There was still so much work to be done, but Luke was no longer the man who had been struggling on the fringes of society. He was an integral part of a team that was changing the world, one home at a time. The Tesla Home project had gained momentum. What started as a small initiative to address the housing crisis for Tesla employees had quickly transformed into an ambitious plan for creating entire sustainable communities. The initial excitement had given way to the hard work of refining designs, securing materials, and preparing for construction. As the project expanded, so did the team. Elon's vision of a fully integrated community, complete with solar panels, battery storage, and energy-efficient homes, was coming to life. Luke was amazed at how quickly everything was coming together. He had been part of the process from the very beginning, but now it felt like the project was taking on a life of its own. As the designs for the homes began to take shape, Luke found himself deeply involved in the details. It wasn't just about making homes affordable anymore. It was about creating homes that felt like they could actually change lives. For Luke, this was the part of the project that mattered most, making sure that the homes weren't just affordable, but also practical and livable. The homes had to be more than just a roof over someone's head. They had to provide a sense of dignity, a sense of ownership. And that, Luke realized, was where his own experience came in. He knew what it was like to struggle for a place to live, to feel like you were constantly fighting against a system that seemed impossible to beat. At one of their team meetings, Luke was discussing the final design features with Rachel, Raphael, and Mai. They were reviewing the layout of the smallest units in the community, trying to balance efficiency with comfort. "I think we're getting closer," Rachel said, pointing to a blueprint of one of the small homes. "But I'm still concerned about the size of the kitchen. We don't want it to feel cramped." Luke nodded, thoughtfully examining the floor plans. "The kitchen's important, but it's not just about size," he said, his voice steady. "It's about how people use the space. When you don't have a lot of room, you have to make the most of it. A small kitchen can still work as long as it's designed efficiently." Raphael, who had been quietly sketching in the corner, looked up. "What do you mean by efficiently?" Luke smiled. "Well, for example, instead of having a big counter, we could build in storage underneath. You'd be surprised at how much space you can save just by being smart with where you put things. We could also think about multi-purpose furniture, tables that fold up, chairs that double as storage. People who live in small spaces often need to use every inch of space they have." Mai, who had been listening closely, nodded. "That's true, and it could help reduce costs too. If we don't need to use as much material, it can make the homes even more affordable." Luke's heart swelled with pride. For the first time, he felt like he was not only being heard, but also shaping the direction of the project. His practical suggestions, born from his own experiences, were starting to influence the design in ways that mattered. Over the following weeks, the team worked tirelessly, refining the plans for the homes. Luke's role evolved from being a contributor to becoming a key player in the design process. Every day, he collaborated with the team to make sure that the designs were not only practical, but also met the needs of the people who would be living in them. It was a challenge, but it was one that Luke embraced wholeheartedly. One afternoon, as the team was finalizing the designs for the community's shared spaces, Elon called a meeting. Luke was eager to hear what Elon had in mind, but there was a sense of tension in the air. The project had reached a critical point. Construction was about to begin, and the team was still making last-minute adjustments. "All right, everyone. I know we've been pushing hard, but we're at a crucial juncture," Elon began, his voice calm but urgent. "We've made incredible progress, but now we need to focus on the next steps. We're not just building homes, we're building a community. This project isn't just about housing, it's about creating a space where people can thrive, a place where they can live and work in harmony with the environment." Luke sat quietly, absorbing Elon's words. It was clear that this project had become more than just a solution to a housing problem. It was a vision of a better future, where sustainable living wasn't a luxury, but a reality for everyone. Elon paused for a moment before continuing. I know we've all put in long hours, but now we need to take a step back and think about the big picture. We need to make sure that this community isn't just functional, but that it fosters connection. It's not just about affordable housing, it's about creating a place where people feel like they belong. Luke nodded. That was exactly what he had been trying to convey all along. It wasn't just about providing shelter. It was about creating a space where people could build lives, form connections, and feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. The meeting continued, with the team discussing the final details of the design. There were talks about community centers, shared gardens, and spaces where people could gather. It was clear that Elon's vision was for more than just houses. It was for entire neighborhoods where people could live sustainably and support each other. As the meeting wrapped up, Elon turned to Luke. You've been an incredible asset to this project, Luke. Your insight has helped us make this something real. We're closer than ever to making this happen, and I can't thank you enough for your contributions. Luke felt a lump form in his throat. He had never expected this. When he first came to Tesla, he had been struggling just to make ends meet. Now he was part of something that could change lives, not just his own, but the lives of thousands of people. He smiled at Elon, feeling a sense of accomplishment that he had never known before. I'm just glad to be part of it, Luke said, his voice filled with gratitude. This is going to make a real difference. Elon smiled back. That's what we're here for. After months of design work, late nights, and countless revisions, the Tesla home project was finally ready for its public debut. The team was gearing up for the big reveal, an event that would showcase not just the homes themselves, but the entire vision for Tesla communities, a new approach to affordable, sustainable housing. The homes, powered by Tesla's solar panels and battery storage systems, were designed to provide more than just a roof over someone's head. They were meant to offer a sense of security, community, and sustainability. Luke had come a long way since that first night he had met Elon in the parking lot. Back then, he had been living in his car, struggling to keep it all together. Now he was sitting in a conference room, reviewing the final presentation for the event. The design had evolved far beyond the initial sketches, and the first prototype homes were nearly complete. The team was ready to share their work with the world, but the pressure was on. This event was more than just a presentation, it was a statement. Tesla was not just a company making electric cars anymore. They were tackling one of the country's most pressing issues, affordable housing. Elon had promised that the homes would be affordable for Tesla employees, and the response from the media, government officials, and the public could make or break the project. It was a huge moment, and Luke knew that everything they had worked for over the past several months was leading up to this day. He was nervous, but there was also a deep sense of purpose inside him. As the day of the reveal approached, he found himself reflecting on how much had changed for him personally. He had gone from being a production line worker with no hope of a stable future to being an integral part of a project that could change thousands of lives. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about creating something that could provide a path forward for people who were struggling, just like he had been. The morning of the event, Luke arrived early at the venue, a large conference hall in the heart of Silicon Valley. The space was filled with journalists, Tesla executives, government officials, and even some local community leaders who had supported the project from the beginning. The air was buzzing with anticipation as people gathered, ready to see what Tesla had been working on. Luke stood at the back of the room, a little unsure of where to position himself. He had worked so closely on this project, yet today felt different. Today, he wasn't just a contributor, he was a face of the project. His role in the Tesla Home Initiative had gone from being a behind-the-scenes helper to someone who would be standing in front of the crowd, sharing the vision behind the homes they had created. He checked his phone and saw a message from Mai, who had become not only a colleague, but also a close friend over the past few months. They had spent hours together, working late into the night, brainstorming ideas and refining designs. Mai had always been there to offer support and encouragement, and Luke was grateful for their friendship. Mai, I know you're nervous, but you've got this. You're part of something that will change the world." Luke smiled as he read the message. She always knew what to say. He typed a quick reply. "Luke, thanks, Mai. I'm just hoping I can do it justice." He took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. A few minutes later, Elon stepped onto the stage and the room fell silent. His presence commanded attention. He began by speaking about the current state of the housing crisis in the Bay Area, how Tesla employees were struggling to afford housing, and how the company's commitment to sustainability had led them to rethink what housing could be. "This is not just about building houses," Elon said, his voice steady and confident. "It's about creating communities, sustainable, affordable, and livable communities." Tesla employees should not have to worry about where they'll sleep at night, just as they shouldn't have to worry about whether the work they do every day is helping to create a better world. This project, Tesla Home, is a solution to that problem. Elon paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the room. Luke felt a sense of pride welling up inside him as he listened. This was the moment they had all been working toward. Tesla was no longer just about electric cars. It was about changing the way people lived. Luke had played a part in that transformation, and that realization made the nervousness in his chest feel lighter. Elon continued, introducing the team behind the project, including Luke. "We've had the privilege of working with some incredible people on this project, but one person I want to highlight is Luke Barnes," Elon said, his eyes scanning the room. Luke brought a unique perspective to this project. He's not just a designer or an architect. He's someone who's lived the experience of housing insecurity, and that perspective is something no one else could provide. The room erupted into applause. Luke felt his cheeks flush, but the words meant everything to him. He had come so far from those difficult days when he had slept in his car, unsure of where his life was headed. Now he was being recognized not just for his work, but for the journey he had gone through to get to this point. It was validation, not just for him, but for everyone who had ever struggled with housing insecurity. The applause felt like a recognition of his resilience. As the presentation continued, Luke stood backstage preparing for his turn. He had been asked to speak about the human side of the project, how it wasn't just about homes, but about creating a sense of stability and community for people who had been left behind by the system. It was a daunting task, but Luke knew that this moment was important. It wasn't just about the homes they had built, it was about the lives they would change. When it was finally his turn to speak, Luke walked onto the stage, his heart pounding. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but he knew they were all watching. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "Good afternoon," Luke began, his voice a little shaky at first. "I'm Luke Barnes, and I've had the honor of working on the Tesla Home project. But I'm not just a part of the team, I'm someone who's lived the reality of what we're trying to solve." He paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "A few months ago, I was living in my car. I couldn't afford rent in the Bay Area, and I didn't know how to make ends meet. But now, I'm standing here today, helping to design homes that can actually change lives." Luke continued, sharing his story of struggle and hope. He spoke about the pressure of rising rents, the insecurity of not knowing where you would sleep, and the constant anxiety that came with trying to survive. He explained how Tesla's new approach to housing, one that was affordable, sustainable, and community-focused, was exactly what people needed. "This project isn't just about building houses," Luke concluded. "It's about giving people the dignity and security they deserve. It's about creating homes where families can thrive, where people can build stable lives, and where the stress of housing insecurity no longer hangs over them. That's what this project is about." The room erupted into applause. Luke's heart swelled with emotion as he finished speaking. This was the moment he had been working for, the moment where his journey, his struggles, and his contributions had come full circle. As the event continued, the energy in the room was palpable. People were excited, inspired, and eager to learn more about Tesla Home. It was no longer just a dream, it was a reality. And Luke knew that this was only the beginning. The Tesla Home project had moved beyond the realm of concept and prototype. The public reveal was a resounding success, and the world had taken notice. The energy in the room that day, after Luke's heartfelt speech, had left an impression on everyone present, from the media to Tesla's employees and even the local government officials. The project was no longer just a dream. It was rapidly becoming a reality. But Elon wasn't satisfied with just showcasing the initial designs. As the weeks passed, he pushed the team to think bigger, to dream bigger. The vision had evolved from affordable homes for a few employees to entire sustainable communities. The homes were only one part of the grand plan. Tesla wasn't just building houses. They were reshaping the future of living itself. One morning, Luke arrived at the office to find a message waiting for him. It was from Elon, asking the entire team to meet in the conference room. The subject line was simple: big news. Luke's heart raced. What could this be about? When the team gathered in the conference room, there was an air of anticipation. Elon stood at the front, his usual calm but intense demeanor signaling that something important was about to unfold. Luke's stomach fluttered as he sat down at the table, wondering what the next phase of the project would entail. "I hope everyone is ready for a challenge," Elon began, pacing back and forth in front of the room. "What we've done so far has been great, but we're not stopping here. This project is going to change the world, and to do that, we need to think on a much larger scale." Luke looked around the room. His colleagues, who had spent countless hours refining designs and discussing technical specifications, seemed eager to hear what Elon had in mind. He couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. Tesla had always been a company that pushed boundaries, and now they were about to push the boundaries of housing itself. "We're not just talking about a handful of homes," Elon continued. "We're talking about entire communities, self-sustaining neighborhoods with Tesla-powered energy systems, public transportation, and everything that people need to live well. These communities will be completely powered by solar energy, and will use our battery storage technology to ensure that every home has a consistent and reliable power supply." A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. Luke's mind began to race. Entire communities? This was bigger than anything he had imagined. It wasn't just about building affordable homes for a few employees anymore. It was about creating entire neighborhoods that could serve as models for sustainable living in the future. Elon turned to face the team, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. This isn't just about offering affordable housing for Tesla employees. This is about creating a blueprint for the future, a future where clean, renewable energy powers entire neighborhoods. We're going to apply the same principles we use to revolutionize the electric car industry to the housing industry, and I want each of you to be a part of that. Luke's mind was buzzing. This was what they had been working toward all along, but now it was real. Elon had just raised the stakes. He had known from the beginning that the project was ambitious, but this was on another level. This was about creating entire ecosystems where people could live and work without the constant pressure of rising rents, poor air quality, or unsustainable energy usage. It was a vision of the future, and it was beginning to take shape in front of him. Elon's voice broke through his thoughts. "Here's the plan. We have already secured land outside Fremont, 200 acres to be exact. This land will be the first site for what we're calling Tesla communities. It will be the first community built using our designs, our technology, and our approach to sustainable living. We're going to build these homes, but we're also going to create an entire ecosystem, a place where everything works together in harmony." Luke felt his heart race as the scale of the project began to sink in. This was no longer just about housing. It was about revolutionizing the way people lived. "We've already begun working with local officials to rezone the land for mixed-use development," Elon continued. "We're not just building homes. We'll have stores, community centers, recreational areas, and public spaces, all powered by Tesla's energy systems. We're also going to include transportation solutions, electric buses, car-sharing services, and bike lanes, so that people won't need to rely on traditional cars to get around." The team looked stunned. This was more than just a new development. This was a vision for how future cities could operate. Tesla communities wouldn't just be a place to live. They would be a model for what a sustainable, clean, and efficient community could look like. Elon's ambition had always been boundless, but this felt like something that could fundamentally change the way people interacted with the world around them. Elon continued, "This first site will be a pilot. We will take everything we've learned and refine it as we go. But I want you all to understand that this is the beginning of something much larger. This is about creating a new standard for what living should be like in the 21st century. We are going to build these communities, and once we've perfected the model, we'll scale it to other areas, across the US and even around the world. Luke couldn't believe what he was hearing. Tesla was already known for its innovation in the automotive world. But now they were stepping into something even bigger: sustainable communities powered by renewable energy. This wasn't just about Tesla's success anymore. It was about creating a future that would help millions of people. It was about changing the world for the better. The meeting continued, with the team discussing the next steps. The land had already been secured, and construction was scheduled to begin in a matter of months. Elon was confident that they could break ground on the first Tesla community within 6 months. The timeline was aggressive, but it felt achievable. The team was fired up, ready to take on the challenge. As the meeting wrapped up, Elon turned to Luke. "You've been an invaluable part of this project, Luke," he said, "and I want you to be at the forefront of the Tesla Communities initiative. Your perspective is exactly what we need as we begin to design the layout for the community. You've helped us make these homes practical and livable, and now we need you to help us make sure the whole community works together." Luke's heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was a responsibility. He was being asked to help shape the future of entire communities, and he was ready for the challenge. The months that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The Tesla Communities project had gone from an idea to a fully realized plan, and now the team was moving into the construction phase. Luke was at the center of it all. He had gone from being a worker on the production line to one of the key figures behind a project that would reshape the future of housing, not just for Tesla employees, but for people around the world. Every day felt like a race against time, but Luke had never been more energized. His role had grown beyond the design phase. He was now helping coordinate the layout of the entire community, ensuring that everything, from the placement of homes to shared public spaces, was practical, sustainable, and, most importantly, lived up to the vision that Elon had laid out. The land in Fremont had already been cleared, and the foundations for the first homes were being poured. As construction began to take shape, Luke could see it all coming to life. The first homes were already starting to look like the vision they had crafted together, but the community itself, complete with solar panels, energy storage systems, public transportation hubs, and green spaces, was starting to feel real. The plans were no longer blueprints on a page. They were becoming a living, breathing community. One day, Luke stood at the edge of the construction site, looking over the work that had been done. He felt a mix of pride and disbelief. This was his work, his ideas, his vision coming to fruition. What started as a personal struggle, a battle against an unaffordable housing market, had turned into something much bigger. It had become a movement, a revolution in how people thought about living sustainably and affordably. As he surveyed the site, Mai walked over to join him, a smile on her face. The two of them had become close over the past several months, working side by side on every aspect of the project. They had spent countless hours together, pushing each other to think bigger, to challenge the status quo. But now they were standing together on the brink of something truly remarkable. "It's really happening, isn't it?" Mai said, her voice full of awe as she looked around at the half-built homes and solar arrays being installed. Luke nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "It is. I never thought I'd be standing here looking at all this. A few months ago, I didn't even know if I'd have a place to sleep tonight. And now we're creating something that could help so many people." Mai smiled warmly, her eyes shining. "You've done more than just contribute, Luke. You've helped lead this project. Your perspective made all the difference. Without you, we would have missed so many crucial details." Luke felt a surge of gratitude. "I never could have imagined that something so personal would lead to something so big," he said quietly. "But now that we're here, it's hard not to feel like we're doing something that's going to change the way people live. This isn't just for Tesla employees. It's for anyone who's ever struggled with finding affordable housing." Mai's smile widened. "Exactly. And we're not done yet. We're just getting started." As the months went on, the project continued to grow. More homes were built, and the community started to take shape. The first residents moved in, Tesla employees who had been waiting for the opportunity to live in the new community. The excitement among the residents was palpable. For many of them, this wasn't just about moving into a new home. It was about moving into a new life, one where they didn't have to worry about rising rents or long commutes. A life where sustainability wasn't just an ideal, it was a reality. Elon made regular visits to the site, checking in on progress and making sure everything was moving forward according to plan. He continued to push the team to think bigger, but he was also quick to acknowledge their successes. The first phase of the community was on track to be completed ahead of schedule, and the positive feedback from the first residents was overwhelming. One afternoon, Elon gathered the team together for a special meeting. The first phase of homes was nearly done, and he had some exciting news to share. "I just got off the phone with several investors," Elon said, his voice full of excitement. "They're extremely impressed with the progress we've made and the success of the first phase. They want to invest in the next phase of Tesla communities across multiple locations." Luke's heart skipped a beat. This was bigger than he had imagined. The investors weren't just interested in the homes themselves, they were interested in the entire concept. Tesla communities were set to become the blueprint for future developments all around the country and possibly even globally. Elon continued, "This means we can expand our vision. We'll be able to build more homes, more communities, and eventually scale this to meet the needs of hundreds of thousands of people. This is the future of living. This is the future of housing, and we're just getting started." The room erupted into applause. Luke stood there stunned as the magnitude of what Elon was saying sank in. The Tesla Home Project, which had started as a small initiative to help employees, was now set to expand on a massive scale. Tesla communities would become a global model for affordable, sustainable living. As the applause died down, Elon turned to Luke. "You've been an integral part of this, Luke. I want you to be part of the next phase as we scale this to other locations. Your insight, your perspective, everything you've brought to this project has been invaluable. We need you to help us take this vision to the next level." Luke's heart swelled with pride. "I'm honored," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is what we've been working toward all along, and now it's really happening." Over the following months, Tesla communities expanded rapidly. New neighborhoods were built in other locations, each one modeled after the original site in Fremont. The homes were energy efficient, affordable, and designed with the needs of real people in mind. Tesla's innovative technology, from solar panels to battery storage, powered the entire community, making it a self-sustaining model for the future. Luke's journey, from a production line worker living in his car to a key player in the creation of one of the most innovative housing projects in the world, was a testament to the power of resilience, collaboration, and vision. His experience, his struggles, and his determination had brought him to this point, and now he was helping to change the world. As the first Tesla communities continued to grow, Luke stood at the center of it all, proud of what they had accomplished and excited for the future. What started as a simple idea to provide affordable housing for Tesla employees had become a game changer for the entire housing industry. And this was just the beginning.